Welcome to the Lentil Intervention Podcast, talking all things movement, whole food nutrition and environmental wellness with your hosts, Ben and Emma.
Hello everybody and welcome to another episode. This is lucky number 13. Now, did a little bit of geek Google searching and I came up with a few little fun facts about the number 13. So firstly, in numerology, the number 13 is considered a number which signifies upheaval and even destruction. Now, whilst this might sound a little ominous, the change can also be positive. And in Italian, to do 13, fare 13, I hope that I said that right, is to hit the jackpot. Now, this is quite apt as our next guest is going to talk about a whole bunch of positive changes that you can make in your respective lives. My name is Ben Adelberg, coming to you from Auckland, New Zealand, and of course, joined as always by my co-host Emma Strutt in Boona, Queensland. Hello, Emma.
G'day, Ben. Hi, folks. Hope you're well.
Great. So now, before we kick off, I just want to make a special little announcement for those of you in New Zealand. The great news is that I am due to start my next Plant-Based Nutrition for Sport workshop tour, and yes, I am finally bringing it to the South Island. Now, the venues will be mostly plant-based vegan cafes, so great to support our local communities. And kicking it all off, the first date will be Thursday, the 9th of July. That's right, this week in Nelson. And that will be followed by, in no particular order, Auckland, Whangarei, Tauranga, Taupo, Rotorua, and the final date will be the Sunday, the 22nd of November in Christchurch. There will be a few more dates added, so simply head over to the Fitness Locker Facebook page and you will find all the individual event dates as I confirm all those details as they happen. So that's just my little bit. Emma, over to you.
All right. Thanks, Ben. Okay, so I'm very keen to dive into this one. Today we sit down with the effervescent physiotherapist and coach Brad Dixon, owner of EVERFIT Physio at the Mount in Tauranga. In addition to his physio and coaching work, Brad is a writer for Trail Runner magazine and has got quite the sporting resume too, which I'm sure we'll touch on at some point today. But the reason why I am so excited to have Brad on the show is he absolutely walks his talk when it comes to health and well-being. And he really does take a holistic approach with his clients, incorporating many important pillars of lifestyle medicine. Now, I think in the health and wellness space, especially in my space, nutrition, there is a tendency to be quite reductionist, take a reductionist kind of approach and get all caught up with, this specific micronutrient or that particular vegetable, like it's going to be the silver bullet. But in my mind, that's a little bit short-sighted. And Brad has actually coined the phrase expansive wellness, which is just brilliant. And we'll get him to expand on that in the show today. But enough of my rambling. We'll bring Brad on now. But Brad, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you. And thank you for the wonderful introduction, Emma. That was that really just nailed it. That's exactly what I'm about. And I think you put it really nicely. So thanks for that.
Brilliant. So, Brad, welcome again. Let's start off with a little bit about yourself, your own personal journey in terms of what you studied. As Emma said, you're a physio. We do share a common path there that we're both coaches as well, and we'll touch a little bit on that as well, I'm sure. But talk to us a little bit about, what got you to where you are now.
Yeah, look, I think I started off, I studied for my physio degree, and I got that from Otago University in the late 90s. In 1997, I think I graduated. And then after that, got a postgraduate certificate in health science and also a certificate in psychology and counselling. So I studied a little bit more holistically rather than just the physical sense. It's trying to get a really good broad outline of some of the other aspects of health and wellness. And so I think over the last 20 years, since graduating, I've just started to take a bit of a deep dive into what actually makes us human, and what sort of things we can do to nudge us towards wellness. And I think that all really started when my uncle got sick. He got diagnosed with bowel cancer, about 8 years ago now. And he would blog and email the family just about something. He was talking about red meat and how it's a possible cause of bowel cancer. And after looking into it, realized that he had a point. And so I started reducing my meat content, and so did my family. And then over the last 8 years, we've gradually progressed to become plant-based. So that's kind of how we got into it from that side as well.
I believe your young daughters played a little role in that as well.
Yeah, like, absolutely. I mean, I started to go more plant-based purely for health and performance, and then my wife was more did it for sustainability and the environment. But my daughters purely went plant-based due to animal ethics. We were on a camping holiday, and they started to make friends with Sophie the pig, and they used to feed her every morning and stroke her, and just really connected with Sophie. And when we left, they said to us, "Oh, we can't wait to play with Sophie, next time we come." And we sort of just had to explain to them that Sophie wasn't a pet, and that she was livestock, and her purpose was to be grown, raised, to be then slaughtered, so that we could have ham and we could have bacon, and that look they gave us when we explained it, because we were explaining it quite nonchalantly, like, this is just the way it is. And they looked at us as if we were monsters. And I think that's kind of when we sort of thought, well, wait a minute, maybe we've been conditioned, just to expect that this is just the way it is. And they just immediately gave up eating bacon and ham straight away. They just wouldn't touch it. And then over the next few years from there, realised that, chicken was from a chicken, and they made friends with a chicken. And I think they just started to understand that meat was actually from a sentient being, an animal that actually could feel fear, joy, and pain. And so they made that connection very early, and so they are plant-based primarily for animal ethics reasons. So we've all, as a family, come into the plant-based lifestyle from very different directions, but then at the end of the day, we all can understand each other's point of view. So it's been a really great learning journey for all of us.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And your lovely wife, she's in the medical profession, isn't she?
Yeah. So she's a GP, and a very good holistic GP. Likes to try and look at the whole picture. But as you probably know, GP land is the system is it's pretty flawed in my opinion, in that you only have 10 or 15 minutes per client/patient, and it's really a bit of an ambulance parked at the bottom of the cliff a lot of the time, and I think Coral feels a little bit frustrated sometimes at not being able to really get in and get to the crux of the issue. She's always running behind and trying to do the best for her patients, but feeling very stretched and flustered. So I think I get that message from a few GPs. It is very hard sometimes to look at the patient holistically, because there just isn't, the system's not set up, and they don't have the time to do it.
That's right. In fact, a very recent guest of ours, Dr. Shireen Kassam, spoke of exactly the same problem, and that's what inspired her to create a platform that provides a lot of resources. So when you don't have the time to have the conversation, you at least can pass on a link to a website, say, and say, look, do some reading. And I think what's evolving in this space, and there's a lot of platforms now, a lot of fantastic platforms, is just a base for resources that a lot of health professionals like Coral herself can use. But yeah, we certainly, at the end of the day, it's that interaction, that one-on-one interactions, that's the most important. It's where you can really influence the change.
Yeah, I totally agree. And in my psychology and counselling training, the big thing I got out of that is we just need to give people more time so that we can connect, and then they can feel comfortable talking and unpacking. Yeah. And then they usually come up with their own solutions. And we have a medical system that doesn't really allow that, for that real lovely connection and for that ability to talk and listen. I think, for me, I'm a solution-based physio. People come in and see me, and I tend to just try to find solutions. And I'm learning now to just give more time, more space for people to talk and tell their story. And actually really powerful, and it can be a really great empowerment to help someone move along to actually solve some of their own issues. So that's probably what's missing, and that's time, and that comes back to our talk that we had earlier about busy lifestyles. I think we're all just so busy, we don't have that time to really connect on a deeper level to allow a deeper sense of healing.
Yeah, perfect. And I mean, the system as it is at the moment, it's kind of a sick care system, not a healthcare system, in my opinion,
agreed.
anyway. So what does wellness mean to you then?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's evolving. Look, when I first started looking into wellness about 8 years ago, I really just looked at the individual. So I was looking at habits that would help an individual become more well. I'm looking at how they can get a more robust immune system and how they can get fitter and stronger. And but now wellness is a lot more expansive, because I now know that you cannot be well in a sick world, and you cannot be well when we have unclean water and soil that's been depleted of nutrients, and we can't be well when our fellow brothers and sisters overseas are starving to death. So I think we need to look at it way more expansively and realize that our habits have to be positive and enhancing for not only us, but for our families, our communities, our country, and our planet, and our fellow planet inhabitants, our animals, our livestock, our pets, the fish in the sea. It's looking at it way more expansively. And when you start to do that, I think that's when we can really get a hold on what it truly means to work towards wellness.
Now, I know during, having heard you present, you make references to the blue zone areas with some of the habits that we will talk about. But I think there's a very important correlation to that, in the sense that, from a nutrition point of view, we're always making reference to the blue zone areas. It's always about this is the type of eating that, now to our listeners, let me just first elaborate what a blue zone area is. There are regions of the world where people live much longer than average. So they're the highest percentage of centenarians. Sorry, I can't speak today. Centenarians, there we go. They also suffer a fraction of the diseases that commonly kill people in other parts of the developed world, and enjoy more years of good health. And the blue zone areas include Okinawa in Japan, Sardinia in Italy, Nicoya in Costa Rica, Icaria in Greece, and Seventh-day Adventists in Loma Linda, California. Now, what these studies look at with the blue zones, getting back to my point now, is it's not just nutrition, it's lifestyle. And in a way, you can kind of relate that to the definition of wellness, because it talks about relationships, it talks about a purpose, it talks about being active. And again, I don't want to give away some of the habits, but there's a direct it's almost like you can actually refer back, you can reference what you've just said to the blue zone areas.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think you pick up on some big wellness rocks, like I call them. I talk to people about working on your 3 big wellness rocks in your wellness wall, rather than spending lots of money on the pebbles. Because people, I think we are so used to being marketed these little pebbles that make people money, that really, if we just invest time in the 3 big rocks of wellness, which is our relationships, which is our sense of purpose, which is clean water, which is sleep, if we can do that, then we really set that platform out for a much more deeper connected way of living, and definitely then a much better platform for health and wellness.
Yeah. And you've kind of categorized your expansive wellness into, I think, is it 10? Correct me if I'm wrong, kind of 10 ways to improve our health and our habits. Would you mind talking us through those?
That's correct. Yeah, no problem. So I can list them first of all, and then go back to them if you want. But
sounds great.
So I've had a bit of a look over the past few years and just tried to create some daily enhancing habits that we can all tap into that helps us. But then also in the background, they also help the communities, and they also help the planet. So the first one is a plant-centered diet, and then the second one is meditation and mindfulness. The third one is being able to stand up more and move more during the day. The number 4 is functional bodyweight exercises, so being full body strong. Number 5 is sleep. 6 is the power of cold water, which a little bit of an outlying one, but I think it's very important. Number 7 is moderate and vigorous cardiovascular exercise. Number 8 is fasting. 9, and probably the most important one is quality relationship. And number 10 just talks about reducing, reusing, recycling, and refusing, to try and move away from this consumeristic, materialistic, buy more, get happy type of lie that we've all been taught. That we need to actually try to make use of the things we have, make them last longer, rather than going out and buying more stuff, because that buying more stuff is creating real problems on our planet.
Yeah, preach.
And listening to this list, I mean, one can really see the influence that your own personal background has, and even the influence from your family. You know, I mean, there's elements that will come from your physio background. There's elements that come from, you know, the more psychology background. There's potentially a bit of influence from your family. I don't know who's influenced the cold thermogenesis, as you call it, but we'll get into that. But before we do go into the detail, just one question. You're also an endurance sports coach. That's the one thing that you and I do share. To some degree, but is there anything in particular that you take as an approach that you incorporate into the way how you interact with your athletes? You know, do you incorporate some of these daily habits into the way you guide your athletes, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Like and it'd be quite interesting to talk to some of my athletes about it, but I've really evolved and changed over the last 5 years, and now when we sit down now and have our catch-ups, which I do every 4 to 6 weeks with each individual athlete. You know, I'm talking about the process and the framework of habits around the training, even more than the training. So I will give people sessions, and they'll have their reps and their sets and their rest, and we'll create that lovely week and month and that block. But you know, we talk now more about how are their cold showers going, and how's their plant-based eating plan going, their sleep quality, how's their relationships. You know, we talk about all of that because that helps give framework and stability to the process. That process breeds consistency, and consistency is the key to success when it comes to endurance training and when it comes to life. So look, I've really changed now. I'm really a lot more about the joy and the process. And then, you know what, the results and the performance comes then later. You know, rather than becoming performance and data driven, I'm now more process driven, and then I get the results and the performance later anyway.
I could not agree anymore. And the key word, consistency, is something that my athletes get tired of hearing from me. And what's important with your approach, and we certainly do have very, very similar approaches, although I do not, and I'm going to keep talking about this, the cold showers, but maybe you'll convince me by the end of this. But, you know, it's managing stress. And a lot of these elements manage that, because what people don't realize is, well, I've got the perfect plan, I'm following the plan, but I'm not achieving the results. Why? But when you deep dive, you realize they're only sleeping 4 hours a day, or they're not eating correctly, or they've got stress at home, relationship-wise, or poor relationships at work, or whatever the case is. So it is so fundamental to have the environment, as I call it, more conducive to being able to achieve, to being able to perform, to be able to stretch, you know, set goals and achieve them. But without that, the process that you talk about, it's pushing a molehill uphill.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Unless you have that framework, then the training will fall over. And so you know, it's about almost giving the minimal dose required to get some change, and then making sure that the framework and those habits are really dialed in, and then you can up the training. And what I used to do in the past is give people way too much training and wonder why they get injured and sick and fall over. And it's just because I wasn't giving that process the respect it deserved. And so now I'm a lot more process and habit focused. And you know, my athletes love that. We have great chats when we meet up. We chat about lots of cool things, and I feel like I get to know them a little bit better, and it makes my coaching far more enjoyable than just being data driven and just being process driven. It's
and that would help with their mind. that would help with their mindset too, wouldn't it? I mean, you can be doing everything right on paper, but if you're just miserable in your training and your eating, like it's not going to result in good outcomes.
It's about enjoyment.
Yeah, absolutely. The joy.
It's a 0.1% that's professionals. The rest are people that are doing for lifestyle choice, to be healthier, to get out and enjoy the planet. You've got to enjoy it. You have to. Otherwise, why are you doing it? That's what I ask. Why are you setting that alarm for a ridiculous time in the morning to go out in the cold, the wet, the dark? Why? Because of enjoyment. There's got to be that element of enjoyment. Now, Brad, you talk about your athletes, but you yourself as an athlete have also seen change and results. You're running faster in some respect.
Yeah. Like I was after I made my change when I was 38, and I had a bad knee injury. I had a meniscus tear. I couldn't run for about 9 months. So I really just threw myself into this wellness journey, and I went plant-based and really tidied up my diet by just cutting back on highly processed food and cut out the meat progressively, and then cut out the dairy. And then just started to get a little bit more full body strong, looked at my sleep a little bit more. And within that 9 months, I'd lost 12 kgs of weight.
Wow.
I was leaner. I was stronger. And I can remember going out for a run when I first started running again with my mate, Andy Vane, who's one of my best training buddies. And we're doing these reps, and I was just leaving them behind me quite easily. And he remarked afterwards, he said, you look like a white Kenyan going around that bend there, and I just think I started to feel more like a runner, and since then have managed to lower my personal bests in the 10K and the half marathon. The half marathon I did a 1:17 back in university back in the late 90s, and then I managed to do a 1 hour 16:20. When I was 42 years of age. So I never thought I'd get down there again. And I know that these habits, and it started with plant-based eating. Those habits really helped me be able to achieve those sort of times.
And you've touched on something really important there. Like, it started with just one thing. So you don't have to do everything at once. Pick one,
Correct.
pick two, pick three things, and eventually they'll flow on. There'll be a domino effect, and you'll be wanting to incorporate more things into your life once you start feeling better.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because plant-based eating was my in, and once I became a little bit more plant-based and just started I stopped the red meat first of all, and then I sort of just gradually stopped a few other things, eliminated things, and then looked at cold therapy and sleep and bodyweight exercises, and then meditation. I would never have been open to meditation and yoga before, but once you dive in, it kind of just opens your mind to other things that were closed before. And I mention that a lot with people with plant-based eating. When you've got your meat goggles on, when you're eating a lot of meat, and I was eating meat every day, and I would eat as much meat as I could because I loved it. A meal was not complete without meat. And I don't about animal ethics and environmental stuff because I liked my meat, and don't tell me what to do. But once I started to decrease it, my mind was more open. The meat goggles came off a little bit, and I was just open to looking at more things. So that was my in for sure. And I think it's a really good point you make. You don't have to do everything perfectly. Just start. Just start, and then pick a little bit of something else, and just don't let perfection ruin your progression. Just start and enjoy the journey, and make sure that joy's at the center of it, and that you're really having fun with it.
Well, I think this is a perfect lead-in to the habits we're going to talk about. Your first point, or your first habit. So let's take it away, Brad. Let's do a little mini deep dive into each of these habits.
Yeah, I'll give you just a mini little thing on each of them. So the first one was definitely the plant-centered diet. And I mean, as you guys know, I'm preaching here to the converted, but once I started to eat less meat and just tidy up my diet, I just lost a lot of weight. I got a lot leaner. I just felt better. I just was able to think clearer. I was able to sleep better. I had a lot of positive flow-on effects, so I kept going with it. And as you both know, I mean, the Eat Lancet study shows that eating more plants and less animals is better for human health, but it's also it's better for planetary health. It's just more efficient to grow food to eat directly to humans, rather than to grow lots of food to filter through animals at a ratio of, the most efficient animal is 9-to-1, so 9 calories of energy to 1 calorie of energy out for a chicken, and then beef it's 16-to-1. It's just inefficient. I mean, if we stand back and look at the efficient scale, it's just dumb. It's a crime against common sense. It's a crime against compassion. It doesn't make much sense to use animals as a large source of food. So for me, it just started to align with what's good for me, what's good for the environment. And then, the last thing, which is the most uncomfortable thing for people to think about and talk about, is that animals are sentient beings. They have, whether it's a livestock or a pet, a calf and a puppy, they feel pain, they feel joy. And to have to take that calf away from its mother and do away with it so that we can take the milk from the mother cow. When you start to just look at the process, it doesn't make much sense. But you've got to do that in your own way, because it's quite uncomfortable to talk about that sort of stuff. So the plant-based eating, was just a bit of a no-brainer for me once you started to take a deep dive down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, and on the show we've had a lot of guests now talk about the environmental impact. We've had a number of guests talk about the health impact, but coming from you and talking about the I guess from a performance, a sporting perspective, it's a very similar story to me. I mean, I haven't attempted to better my 21k run, but I would have never ever in a million years thought about running ultra marathons, let alone marathons. And again, it's this plant-based lifestyle that has allowed me. And I think, if you take that a step further, why? Because we're reducing the inflammatory causing foods. You can eat as much of the good phytonutrients in fruit and veggies and legumes, etc., but we're taking away the inflammatory causing foods. We're getting leaner. I mean, I find myself, I never thought I was overweight or carried too much, perhaps, or anything like that. But everyone I see that I haven't seen in a long time, wow, you're looking leaner. It's similar to the reference of you being that white Kenyan. It's you shed those few kgs you didn't really need to carry, clearly, because your body self-regulates. It's making you lighter. It's helping your recovery. I always say it's a bit anecdotal, but there's a lot more and more research coming through now showing the benefits from a sporting point of view as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so that's a bit of a no-brainer. So that's the first one.
Yeah.
And then number 2 was meditation and mindfulness. So meditation was something I picked up a few years ago, and I was very anti it. I just thought meditation was boring. You sat down, you did nothing. But then I always like to give a habit a go for 100 days. I believe a habit gets sort of imprinted with those connective neural pathways between 66 and about 120 days. So, 3 months is a good time to do something. So I did it for 3 months, and then I ended up doing it for 426 days in a row because it just felt so good. So I did 10 minutes of meditation every day. And it just calmed me down. After the meditation, I just felt like a lighter. Mind was a bit more clear. It was easier to go through tasks. I felt a little bit more calm when dealing with my children. And then looking at the research, it really helps ramp up your parasympathetic system. It helps recovery. It helps digestion.
Yeah.
And then if you look at some of the performance stats from some of the teams in the US, they actually have meditation experts come in and work with teams and individuals because it's just such a great performance aid. So it was one of those habits that I picked up because I knew that I should try it, and now I can't let it go. So now I meditate most nights, most mornings, at least 5 to 6 times a week, and it's one of those habits that I'll never let go of. I just think it's such an important one to help with mind, body, and soul. So it's one of those ones I'll keep doing.
I agree. I think it's quite undervalued. And I mean, it helps you personally, but it also helps in your relationships as well. Like over time, you find that you become a bit less judgmental and less reactive, and you can kind of just sit with things a little bit more. And I find that it does help. If you're having an argument with a friend or family member, it just you're not as reactive.
But what Brad mentioned there, the parasympathetic nervous system, it's you're getting that balance between the sympathetic and parasympathetic, and your sympathetic is that fight or flight. It's the angry side of you. It's a full energy. You're not thinking clearly, and the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest, that's where that calmness comes in. So, Emma, correct. I mean, it does sort of calm you down because that's what you're doing. But now, Brad, what do you incorporate in your meditation? Do you some of our listeners might be picturing, you're sitting there cross-legged, just closing your eyes and don't know what you're thinking about, or are you incorporating breathing exercises? What is your little routine there?
Yeah, my routine is based around an app actually by Andy Petticombe, who's a fantastic ordained Tibetan monk out of London. Went to try and find himself, got ordained as a Tibetan monk, came back and developed this app called Headspace. So I use Headspace as a way to log and journal my meditation journey. And what it does is you basically just sit down and focus on your breath, let thoughts come and go, and just try to use the time is just time with yourself and trying to step out of that busy sort of materialistic world and just have some time with yourself, focusing on your breathing. And the Headspace app is very good because it gives you little packs of things to deal with anxiety or sports performance or dealing with illness. And it's like a little bit of education just seeped in with the meditation practice. So for me, I love it. So I recommend it to most of my clients. So Headspace as a meditation app is just fantastic.
That's brilliant. And it's definitely becoming more prevalent in the sporting world as well. I'm a big fan of measuring heart rate variability as a means of, determining our state of stress or recovery. And even those platforms are bringing in more and more breathing exercises to help the recovery, help improve the recovery. If you have a poor score and you're showing up stressed in the morning, do these breathing exercises to help. So it's certainly becoming more and more prevalent. So you're right. I used to turn my nose up to meditation. I don't do it still. It's not that I still turn my nose up to it, but I'm certainly learning to appreciate it more. And yoga is something I've certainly in the last couple of years really got into because I've appreciated the benefits of it. And Emma, I know you will appreciate this because you're a well-qualified yoga instructor too.
Yeah, but I think if everyone had started incorporating yoga into their lives, we'd live in a much healthier, happier world.
For sure.
Oh, totally agree. Couldn't agree more, Emma. And I say to my clients, if I was a benevolent dictator, I'd make yoga compulsory. And New Zealand would save $12 billion a year on its health budget. I just think yoga is one of those things that it's a full body, mind, soul type way of improving yourself, and it really helps with so many things. And the research is out there too. It's starting to, the research is starting to stack up and show that it can help with digestion, it can help with anxiety, it can help with relationships. It's one of those things that is a really good holistic enhancement performing agent. So I totally recommend it for everyone.
Yeah, good. So next one, Brad.
Yeah, the next one, stand up, move more. So motion is lotion, and our bodies are just designed to move and move hopefully in nature. We're not designed to sit for 8 hours a day like unfortunately most of us do. That's kind of a default setting that totally hampers our entire system. It hampers our breathing, our digestion. It puts tissue tension load on the lumbar spine, neck, shoulders. So sitting for more than 2.5 hours a day has been shown through some research to be as bad as smoking half a packet of cigarettes a week. So it has a lot of health implications sitting. And so much so there's some countries like Denmark actually make it illegal for an employer not to offer an employee a standing desk. And that's been in law since 2014.
Wow.
So I just think New Zealand, again, when it comes to health and safety, we're pretty good with safety, but health, we're about 15 years behind. We need to be standing more during the day. We need to do away with sitting for long periods. And like kids at school, this is what gets me. Kids go and sit in a desk. How are they supposed to learn when they're sitting down like they used to do in Victorian times? We need to have more collaborative ways of learning. And sitting is not very good for learning or studying, I just think we really need to move away from the sit lifestyle that we've kind of created for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
What would you recommend for all of the office workers out there who are usually sitting down for 8 hours a day?
Get a standing desk. So I got a standing desk about 3 years ago now, and I stand about 90% of my day. I sit down sometimes for some initial consults, some sort of psychology consults where I want to sit down and just get into a few things. But otherwise, I'm standing. And that way, from a performance point of view, your hips aren't shortened, your hip flexors aren't shortened, your glute muscle, the biggest muscle in your body, isn't being turned off. It's got blood flow through it. It's just like standing is what we need to be doing more of. If you've got osteoarthritic knees or things like that, then maybe you need to sit a little bit more, but we still need to work on our sit-to-stand ratio and have a lot less sit and a lot more stand for the majority of our working society.
So things like gimmicks like Swiss balls and so on they're not really solving the problem, are they? They're probably actually encouraging more poor posture if you've got a weak core.
Yeah. Look, 10 years ago I used to recommend Swiss balls, but they're a little bit. You sit down to help engage your core because it's a little bit more of an unstable surface. But at the end of the day, you're still sitting, so just stand up.
Yeah.
And then you can throw in some quad stretches. You can do a bit of a back arch every now and then. You feel more productive in the afternoon if you're standing. Just try it,
Because you're getting tired, so you just want to get on with it.
Post lunch.
Yeah.
Slump.
But is the key standing, or is the key to move more?
Oh, it's probably a little bit of both, and it depends on the individual and their work environment. But you definitely to get up and move around a little bit more. But the trouble is when you get into a flow state when you're sitting, and you're doing a task, you won't move. Like people say, I get up and move around every 10 minutes. And sometimes, some days they won't because they'll get into a task and they'll be there for 2 or 3 hours and won't move. So I still think a standing desk is a better way to do it than just to say get up and move. So I definitely get up and move around, but standing desks I think are really, really useful just to make the default mode standing.
Right, should we all stand now for the rest of this
I feel
podcast?
like I should be.
Get up, stand up.
No, look, you raise a very valid point, and I know when, exactly like you say, when you get stuck into tasks, you really get stuck in and you don't move for hours at a time. And I know when I go through phases of more sitting, I feel it in my running. I feel tighter. I'm not as mobile. I'm not, it's and of course the other element you touched on in terms of blood flow is the increased risk of endothelial dysfunction. With the inner lining of the blood vessels are not, signaling to the arteries to relax normally, etc. And then that causes issues with the blood flow. So I think definitely the moving and standing and just don't be static. Just don't be static. That's the key here, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think it's the other thing that I tell to my clients is, make sure you go out for a walk at lunchtime for 20 minutes, a 20-minute power walk at lunchtime with, bare arms to get a little bit of vitamin D as well. Just to get out and move. And it's so much better for you to move. And moving is such a pivotal thing to make you feel better and feel and be more well. And we just don't do enough of it. The guidelines of 150 minutes a week, that's not optimal. That's minimal.
That's minimal. That's right.
That's minimal. And we should aim for optimum. And optimum for me is 420 minutes a week. So it's about an hour a day of moving. And if you're not doing that, then what's happening is you're slowly losing function and you're slowly losing functional lifespan, which means that you're going to be a little bit more dysfunctional towards the end of your life. So we need to start talking about it now as health professionals and get people moving and grooving now rather than waiting until they're 65, 70 and falling over. And that's what the governments do. They throw money in then. It's like, no, we need to be way more proactive. We can't be this ambulance parked at the bottom of a cliff in terms of healthcare. We need to be way more proactive and really start to just promote a more active, well lifestyle, which will save our country literally billions in the future.
Absolutely. And I mean, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? So.
And do you think step counters are a gimmick, or do you actually think they have a place, aiming for the 10,000 steps a day?
I think they have a place for certain individuals, for sure. There's certain people that just love them and they really use them well. Other people, not so much. And so you just have to use a pedometer as a tool that you can use, but you just have to make sure you apply it to the right person. Don't just throw them to everybody, because sometimes that they can actually be detrimental. So, but they definitely have a place for certain individuals.
Okay, good to know. Good. Right. Next one. Still focusing on the body here.
Yeah. So number 4, functional bodyweight exercises. So if you're not full body strong, as an athlete, you'll never reach your full aerobic potential, and as people, you'll never you'll become dysfunctional earlier on in your life. So it's just really important to make sure that we're strong. We clean our teeth twice a day because of dental health. Well, we should be doing little bits of bodyweight exercises once or twice a day just to keep our bodies humming along nicely. So I talk, and I get my clients, and I've got 80-year-old rest home clients who come in, and we get them doing just little push-ups against the wall, and we get them to sit down more slowly and do a bit of a hover whenever they sit down. So just incorporate bodyweight exercises into people's lives, and then you can up the prescription a little bit more if you need to. But we should all be doing some sort of full bodyweight exercises every day. And when people say to me, I don't have time, I just say, you've got time. You've got time to drop right now and give me 10 push-ups. And I make them do it in the clinic. And I just say, look, you've got time. Just make sure that we need to cherish our bodies as the greatest instrument we'll ever own. And a violinist will tune the instrument before a performance, before a concert. Well, we need to be tuning our bodies all the time to get the most strength and vitality out of them. So full bodyweight exercises are a very efficient way to do that. So I try to promote that with all of my physio clients and also my athletes. I get them doing some full bodyweight exercises as well.
Yeah. So what are we talking about? Push-ups, pull-ups, squats, those 3 fundamental exercises?
Yeah. And then planks, you can do some planks. You can just go out and, before you sit down and do a slower squat, maybe look at some walking lunges down the hallway, take steps 2 at a time, park a little bit further away and walk with a bigger stride pattern. Do some tricep dips on the park bench when you're going for your jog in the morning. Just incorporate some sort of full body strength, because I think a lot of people, and I see a lot of people in my clinic that have neck and shoulder pain, and they're just weak. And if I can get them, and I've had some great success especially with women in their 30s and 40s coming in with really bad shoulder pain and really bad neck pain. And I just get them on a push-up course. I just get them doing some push-ups, and over 3 to 6 months, we can almost eliminate their pain. And, these are people that have seen hands-on therapists for years and sort of never really got to the crux of the issue. And the issue is just a general lack of strength. And so once we get our population stronger, we can decrease discomfort, pain, and injury, and get people really moving and being and engaging in life a lot more with less chance of injury.
Yep, brilliant. And I like the point you raised that it doesn't have to be in massive chunks. So you could be doing, squats when you wait for the kettle to boil, or you could be doing some push-ups when the porridge is cooking for 2 minutes in the microwave. Like, all of this kind of adds up, doesn't it?
Oh, look, it absolutely does, and I think I'm a real big believer in sort of micro chunks of activity. 10, 15 years ago, I used to believe that if you didn't have an hour, then it was pointless going out and doing anything, But now, because of my lifestyle, with a young family and a business to run, I just take my opportunities. If I've got 6 or 7 minutes, I'll run over to the beach maybe and do a few push-ups and go for a quick 1-minute dip and then come home and dry off. And then I feel a lot better after work, for instance. And you just take your time and use your time wisely and invest in those small chunks, and it adds up. It adds up, and it pays you back.
Such important messages already. I mean, even if we end it here, such valuable elements to incorporate, honestly, and I just couldn't agree more with so much of this, and I will continue to agree as you move on to the next one for sure.
Oh, cool. Well, I can't wait for you to disagree, Ben. Then we can have a heated discussion.
I don't think I will. I'll just debate one November.
Okay. Before I go on to the next one, I've got a quote to share which I really love by Socrates, and Socrates says it's a shame for a man or woman to grow old without seeing the beauty and strength of which the body is capable. And I think a lot of the time we just don't know what we're capable of because we don't invest the time wisely. And so it's about just making sure we invest that time. So number 5 is sleep. Now, sleep is simply the best performance tool we have. It literally allows the brain to process information to be stored. So it frees up our hippocampus and encourages that ability to get into that flow state. And when we're in that flow state, at work or when we're training or talking and communicating, that's when the magic happens. That's when we make a difference, and that's when we are more productive. So sleep just improves productivity. It improves brain health. It improves body, soul. It's just one of those things that we need to do a lot more of. So 7.5 to 9 hours, make sure that we plan for that. If you're not getting that, look at your day. How can you sort that out? And just make sure that we really give sleep the priority that it deserves, because in our busy culture, sleep's for wimps, and you can get enough sleep when you're dead. Well, that's all just myths. We need to make sure we get enough sleep so that we can be at our optimum. And if we look at the best athletes in the world, like Roger Federer, he hires 2 houses during certain tennis tournaments. So he's got one house for his wife, his twins, and his au pair, and then one house for him. And he does that so that he can get his 12 hours plus sleep a night to really encourage recovery between matches to help his tournament play. So the best in the world are doing it. So we need to, again, just make sure that we are really dialing down on good sleep patterns.
Yeah, and a lot of what you've mentioned, like for people who are struggling with sleep, the mindfulness, the meditation, the movement, like all of this will actually help better their sleep hygiene. Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The best way to work on your sleep quality is to work on your habits from when you wake up. So if you can wake up and you can get into some good habits with some meditation, some movement, looking at the sunrise, getting good relationships, working on your relationships, all that sort of stuff, that all helps with sleep quality. So people are very quick to invest in sleep drops and those sort of things, but I think it's about looking at, they might be helpful in sometimes, but it's about looking at those big things, those big free things first, and that'll then allow you to provide that platform for optimum sleep.
Brilliant. Yep. So on to the next one, where Ben, you might start to disagree.
I wouldn't disagree. I just question.
You're just a wimp. You don't want to go.
I am. But Brad, you definitely post, if anyone follows Brad Dixon on Instagram, I'm sure other platforms as well, but this is something you definitely see on the regular, even in winter.
Yeah, I tried it. This is something I'm quite passionate about, and cold water swimming is one of those things that I fell in love with a few years ago now. And so it's one of my habits. Every Wednesday, I've got a no wetsuit Wednesday. I've been plugging it for 5 years, and I haven't got more than 3 or 4 people along at any one stage. And so no wetsuit Wednesdays, we meet during winter, and we swim around Leisure Island at Mount Maunganui, and it's about an 800 to 1,000 metre swim depending on tide. And we just enjoy it. We get together and we get cold, and that cold water, so when the water gets sort of under 16 degrees, you really start to get those benefits of cold water thermogenesis. So when you get thermogenesis, it's basically your body warming itself up from the inside out using fat burning pathways. So it encourages your cells to literally become more efficient fat burners. So from an endurance point of view, it actually helps you become a more efficient endurance athlete. So cold water therapy not only is good for health and well-being and immune system robustness, there's research out there to show that. I believe, and the research is scant at the moment, but I believe that cold water therapy actually helps you as an endurance athlete. So getting into an ocean or a lake during winter, having a cold shower, and I've had a cold shower basically every morning since November 2015, so almost 5 years now. And I love it. It's now become such a habit. I almost look forward to it. The first few seconds are tough, but then you get your breathing under control, and you come out of a cold shower feeling alive. You just feel brilliant. You come out of a hot shower, and you just feel a bit blah, But so the difference is night and day. And as I say, there's also great benefits not only for wellness and cellular longevity, but there's also benefits for your skin and for your hair. And I think cold water cold water showers is the solution to a lot of the world's problems, including Auckland's water problem at the moment. If people had cold showers, rather than having the average 8-minute shower, which uses 20 litres a minute, we'd have 1.5 to 2 minute shower. So we'd save 40,000 litres of water per person per year. So cold showers have a massive effect in terms of health, and then also saving precious resources like water. So there you go. Have I sold it to you, Ben? Are you going to start taking cold showers now?
Let's be honest here. I have seen research on this, and I do get that. And I have always been a believer that there are certainly benefits of cold water or ice bath immersions, to sort of that realm. I don't know. I think it's one of those things, and this is exactly the point of this whole conversation. Is it's a habit, isn't it? And you get so accustomed to the comfort of first thing in the morning having a nice hot shower, or coming back. I mean, today, honestly, with today's rain, if our dams haven't filled up, I don't know if they ever will. But you come home, and the last thing you want after being miserable for 5 hours in the rain, is another cold shower when you've just been in a 5-hour cold shower. So so it's habit. Yep. It's getting out of that comfort zone, or what we feel is the comfort zone, and it's one of those changes. Look, I mean, it took me forever to get my head around, hey, yoga is actually good for me, and you know what? I'll issue myself a challenge. I will have a cold shower as my next shower, and I'll give it a go.
Awesome.
But I mean, it's also part of our evolutionary pathway. I mean, we've been evolving now as humans for about 7 million years, and mild cold stress has, up until, the last teeny tiny fraction of our evolutionary process is when we kind of solved that problem, I suppose, and moved away from that. So we're not getting these natural ebbs and flows as far as exposure to cold goes, and caloric consumption. So there's a really interesting paper, just for any of the listeners who want to dive a bit deeper into this. It's called the Metabolic Winter Hypothesis, by Ray Cronise and David Sinclair. So they're metabolic and longevity researchers, and they do discuss the potential benefits of exposing yourself to cold on a regular basis, as well as caloric scarcity. Evolutionary, it's quite interesting. We have been exposed to these things for so long, and now we're kind of moving away from that, and like the effects that can have on our health and longevity.
Just to put a little addition onto that, I definitely wouldn't recommend having a cold shower after a long run in cold conditions. I think that's probably taking it a bit too far.
Yeah, of course.
So always, if I have a run in the morning and it's cold and I get home and I'm chilled, then I'll have a warm shower. So I'll have a cold shower in the morning, but definitely if I'm feeling cold because of a session outside, then I'm not too
common sense.
Crazy.
Common sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but that's a really interesting point, Emma, that you brought up about David Sinclair and Ray Cronise getting together. Those two are. I mean, I've followed those guys for years, and it's really interesting that they've got a paper together on the fact that for me, fasting and cold water are two of these things that we need to do more of, because it is something that makes us comfortable with uncomfortable, and it's something that our evolutionary pathway, as you just said, back in the day, a few thousand years ago, food, we couldn't just go to a shop and buy food, and we didn't have warmth. We got cold and we got hungry, and I think those two things are embedded in our evolutionary neuroplasticity. And so to take those things away, I think is actually detrimental. And I think to have a little bit of fasting and have a little bit of cold, I think is very, very useful for longevity and for wellness. So I'm going to look at that paper when we stop this discussion today.
I'll send it to you when we're offline.
Oh, thank you. That'd be great. Cool. Shall I go for number 7 now? So after the cold water, number 7 is what we've touched on before, and that's moderate and vigorous cardiovascular exercise. So I just think we need, the minimum, as we said before, is 150 minutes a week, but I think we need to aim for up to an hour a day, if possible. Move towards that anyway. And about, anywhere between 20 and 30% of that should be vigorous. So, vigorous, a real easy way to put that into context is unable to say more than a few words, so you're just puffing and getting a bit out of breath. So I think you need to be doing most of your cardiovascular exercise aerobically, so you can maybe string a few sentences together speaking, but then 10 to 30% of it can be vigorous, can be a little bit more up tempo or out of breath type work, and that's going to really help. And if you can do that cardiovascular exercise, and that's jogging, walking, riding a bike, rowing, walking up the mount, something like that. And if you can do it in nature, then I think the it's even more enhanced, because I think when you get into nature and you move your body, I think that's what we're designed to do. And also getting into nature means you're going to appreciate nature, which then hopefully means you'll look to save nature, because, as we've talked about before, we need to have a really good, thriving natural world for us to actually be thriving as human beings. So that's really a really important link. I think for that hour, you could include some swimming, some yoga, some bodyweight exercises. You can probably include a little bit more than just the cardiovascular component, because if you do bodyweight exercises, say some burpees and some push-ups, your heart rate's going to rise a little bit there anyway. So I think you don't have to be too fragmented with that. I think it's just try and get an hour of movement a day, and if you can do that with those different components, some flexibility, some cardiovascular exercises, some strength work, I think then you're going to be going a long way to helping your body stay well in the future. So the next one is fasting. So that's something that, again, it didn't really enter my consciousness until I started reading a little bit about calorie restriction, and I read a book basically about how to prolong life, which was written in the late 1800s by a doctor, and he was saying that the one thing that he found in common with all his clinical case studies of people that lived for a long time was that they had some form of calorie restriction. So I think I started to look at fasting for, I suppose, a cellular longevity type thing, and studies have shown that a lot of positive changes and functions of genes related to longevity and protection against certain diseases. There's also autophagy. So autophagy is basically when you stop eating, your digestive system has a break, and then your body's defenses have a bit of a break to spread out and look at other cells in your system. So autophagy for me is kind of like you can't kind of clean your house when you have 100 toddlers running around the house. So fasting for me, for your digestive system, is like taking 100 toddlers out of your house, putting them into daycare, and then giving your house a spring clean. So that's what you're doing when you're fasting. You're giving your digestive system a well-earned break, for your body to actually scan the rest of this cellular network and get rid of sort of any dysfunctional proteins or sentient cells that are sort of not working correctly, and get rid of them and expel them. And so, fasting, I think, is really, really important when we look for longevity and wellness. And the research, again, is stacking up. So for fasting, for me, I've been doing it for about almost 3 years now, and I have 1 day a week, my rest day. So it was Tuesday, now it's Monday, and I just don't eat for about 20 to 22 hours. So I don't eat from, say, dinner time till the dinner time the next day. So it's about 22 hours in total, and that I just do that once a week. That's my protocol, and it works really well for me. And it's just important that everybody looks at some of the research and figures out some kind of fasting protocol for them. The research is varied. It's definitely better for men than women on the whole, from what I've read. And so I would say to people, if you want to do some form of fasting, whether it be an intermittent fasting protocol or any other protocol, that you talk to someone with a bit of knowledge about the subject, and make sure that you apply it and just take note of how you feel and how things are going. So it's definitely something that needs further research. But for me, I think it's something that should be incorporated into most people's wellness plan.
Yeah, and I will just jump in here for the listeners. If you have a chronic condition like diabetes, or especially if you're taking insulin, just check with your GP first before you embark on any of these fasting protocols.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, fasting's a bit of an interesting one, but I mean, like you say, you've got to find something that works for you. And there's other sort of, you do 1 day a week. There's intermittent fasting. There's time restricted feeding. There's a lot of sort of facets to it. And like you say, I think the overarching component of that is giving your body a rest from eating, because then it can perform so many other crucial functions that it needs to provide, I guess, longevity and good health and all the other stuff. So, it's important to sort of, there's no one hard and fast rule about anything. It's about making it work for yourself. So it truly is the individualized approach that, you kind of need to figure out along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just add something to that. Professor Longo has done some great research, and he has a couple days a week where he just has calorie restrictions. So he eats he gets his people to eat between 400 and 500 calories on 2 days out of the 7, and he gets a lot of the positive effects that complete fasting shows. So I think it's just about making sure that you look at reducing your calories every now and then when safe to do so, and I think then you're going to get some of those positive effects.
Yeah.
And the other thing that fasting does is it gives you a real better mindfulness around food, and I think it gives you a better appreciation for food, and also a greater empathy for those in our world that don't have enough food. So we've got about 2 billion people on Earth that don't have enough food to eat, and so it really starts to give you a little bit more empathy for those people that are struggling to have even 2 meals a day. So that's one real positive benefit, one sort of an enhancing, expansive benefit of fasting as well.
So relationships. Now, this is one that's not spoken about very often. And I think it's an absolutely crucial one, because it can certainly elevate levels of stress. It can certainly sort of flip the balance towards a more the sympathetic nervous system, be more engaged, which is not good. So talk to us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, I think this one is probably the most important one, and we are made to be, we're made to be relationship type beings, and we like to connect with others, and having a positive and quality relationships in our lives is the foundation for wellness. And so you can go to as many yoga classes as you want, or drink as many green smoothies as you want, but if you have a dysfunctional, negative, toxic relationship with someone in your family or in your flat or in your workplace, that will undermine all of that other stuff, because it creates anxiety, stress, inflammation within your system. So and we all know, if you've got a day and you've had a fight with your spouse on the way up, to work, you're going to be thinking about that fight, and you're going to be thinking about how the communication was let down and how the relationship is going through some stress. And so I think it's really important that we all make sure, especially as health professionals, that we talk to our clients and our athletes, how are your relationships going, and can you put more effort into that there? Can you be more authentic with your loving relationships? Because when we all start to work on that, then I really do believe we can pivot, which is the word of the moment, pivot towards a much better society. And one of the longest, most comprehensive studies that's ever been done, which is the Harvard study of adult development, it's over 80 years of data, and that study shows that good relationships keep us happier and healthier. So we need to make sure that we are authentic in our actions. Love is not just this gooey feeling or this Hollywood movie. Love is an action towards those that mean the most to us, and we need to be more loving to those that are closest to us, so that we can create that stable platform to expand that love, and to really be more expansive with that love thy neighbor. We need to really expand that out a lot more, and make sure that our relationships allow other relationships to be able to expand out. And then, I truly believe we could make the world a better place. We could be a lot more connected in a lot more positive ways, and hopefully stop some of this tribalism that's going on at the moment, and these very black and white groups that we have in politics and in religion and in nutrition and in all these things. We've got all these labels and groups, and I think we just need to start looking for a little bit more commonality rather than division. And I think then we can really move forward as one, which is what we need to do. So sorry to go on to a little bit of a different tangent there, but relationships is about that. It's about not only our family unit, it's about communities, it's about the planet. It's about being way more expansive with what a positive relationship actually means.
Totally.
Absolutely.
How good does it feel when you help a stranger at something, and it's exactly that. It's the positivity you get from that. So like you say, it's not just the a spouse or a partner at home or whatever. It's being a good person in general gives you that good feeling, and then that's part of it. That's exactly what you've been sort of explaining, So it is important. It is important to not be so focus and say, okay, I'm just going to work on that relationship at home. It's at work. It's when you go shopping, when you step on a bus, when you wherever you are. It's positivity.
It's basically treating others like you would like to be treated yourself. And if we could all think about that a little bit more, and that's where I think meditation gives you that space to be a bit more proactive with action rather than reactive. And so it's about being, understanding that we're all connected, that we're all one big family on this planet, which is our home. It's a closed system. So how we treat each other has a massive effect on our future. And so that positive relationship and treating others as you want to be treated and loving your neighbor in an expansive way is far better than some of these tribes, divisions, and just these little groups that we've formed. And I'm right, you're wrong. That's not what it's about. It's about we're all in this together. Let's look for commonality and have discussion without getting personal. It's about and so I think that's really, really important.
Absolutely. We've kind of got to the stage where if you have a different opinion to me, then I have to hate you. Like it's just a really bizarre mindset that we're kind of getting into as a whole. I think social media probably has a lot to do with that, but I won't go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think we've got to, having differences in opinion is good. It helps us sit in discomfort and look at something from another person's point of view.
Exactly.
We need to look at having a different opinion as a blessing, and sometimes when we come together with people with different opinions, we get our backs up really quickly and get really emotive and reactive. And what we should do is sit down and let people tell their story and think and digest that, and then take what you can sort of resonate with their story, and then maybe add to it. And that's how we grow and learn and get better. It's about having people with
100%.
different opinions, and we need to start acting like that a little bit more rather than this staying entrenched in your position and lobbing grenades and just attacking. It's like, no, let's get together and talk. And if we could all do that, wouldn't the world be a better place?
Well, advancements in society happen because someone stands out with a different opinion to the rest. So you have to embrace it. And we're too quick to judge as well before listening to their stories. So it's exactly what you say, because the society is becoming very segmented. We think this, we're in this group. You think that, you're in that group, and we don't like that group. That's actually impeding on our ability to look for solutions to a lot of issues we have in society at the moment, and it impedes on the way for society to progress. And we're not going to, a lot of these conversations we've had on these podcasts are about looking for solutions to make this world the place it deserves to be. And you can't do that with having those uncomfortable conversations, with respecting others and being open-minded.
Absolutely. And then also sometimes agreeing to disagree and shake hands and hug and move on. It's like,
and then go to yoga together, and then you'll feel good.
Go to yoga and then have a plant-based smoothie and just talk about some other things. So that's really important. So I think that's number 9, relationships is probably the most important wellness, expansive wellness habit, and so that's important to put that across.
Yeah, least spoken about, least understood, and yet so fundamental.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, so in the last item is reduce, reuse, recycle, and refuse. And, I think we need to understand that since 1950, there's been about 8.5 billion tons of plastic produced, and that's used up about 8% of our oil production. And most of it, I think only about 8 or 9% has been recycled, ends up in our beautiful oceans, and look, for me, I swim in the ocean probably 2 or 3 times a week. I love the ocean. I love that ecosystem. 2 out of every 3 breaths we take is produced by the ocean. And we are destroying it, we're destroying it with our quick fix, buy all this plastic crap mentality to make us feel happy. And we're just destroying ourselves without even knowing it. And I just feel we need to make sure, and that we need to break away from this buy more, make happy, consumeristic culture. And we need to maybe move towards a little bit more of a maybe even a degrowth society where we just use stuff for longer and don't buy as much stuff, make do a little bit, maybe repair things, reuse things, recycle things, just reduce our footprint, buy less stuff, which goes against our GDP and our economic models of growth. But we need to look, and this is post-COVID, and I believe COVID and climate change are just symptoms of biosphere breakdown. They're a symptom of our total disregard to the natural or for the natural world. So we need to look at new ways of doing things. And I really love Dr. Kate Railworth's donut economics model. I don't know if you guys have come across that, but she has put forward this fantastic way of a donut model providing a safety net for those most vulnerable in our society, and then having an outer boundary for planetary resources and trying to stay within those two barriers. And I think we just need to start looking at different ways of doing things. And that goes back to what we were talking about before. And in our political system, we're so divided. You're either this or that or this. And it's about, why don't we look at policy from different parties and bring them in and just try to become way more collaborative. And the government could create working groups between different parties to work on some of the biggest problems in our society. But, oh no, they're busy yelling at each other like school kids in the chamber. Yeah. So we need, this change needs to come from the ground up, from the people, and then it needs to come from the top down, and that's legislation and policy from government, local and central. So we really need, in terms of relationships and our ability to reduce, reuse, recycle, and refuse, we need a total change in the way that we live and the way that we actually gauge success. It's not about money. It's about actually wellness and the cleanliness of our water and our soil and the bioactivity of our soil and the cleanliness and health of our oceans. It's making sure our natural world is looked after and it can thrive so that we can then thrive on the back of that. And having that connection and making sure that we talk about that, and that's central to any policy or legislation going forward.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a brilliant place to kind of wrap things up on, because that's such an important take-home message. Before we let you go and enjoy the rest of your weekend, for people who want to find out more, where can they find you? How can they reach you?
Yeah, look, so it's Instagram. So Instagram at EVERFIT Coach is where I post 2 or 3 times a week with wellness tips. A lot of that's about cold water therapy and some nutrition stuff. So yeah, at EVERFIT Coach on Instagram, and then I've also got YouTube. So that's EVERFIT Coach as well on YouTube. So the 2 main ones, I think, Instagram and YouTube. So yeah, if people want to connect, then I'm really happy to connect with others and just share some stuff about a wellness journey.
Look, I think these habits are, there can be more. You can create a list as you wish, but you've really highlighted 10 key elements, which, to our listeners, you don't need a coach you don't need to be a health professional. These are habits you can form yourself, you can research yourself, and just like transitioning to a plant-based diet, where do you start? How do you start? Just start. Pick 1 or 2 that you think can be a little bit more manageable to sort of change. The cold water thing for me. Okay, so I'm already plant-based. I'm already doing a few other things. That's next on my list now. I've made a resolution. I'm going to give that a go. Pick something and give it a go, and don't just give it a go for a week. Brad, you've said that the 66 to 120 days, so 100, so roughly 3 months. You've got to create habit. Yeah. Right, to actually see the benefit. You're not going to see a benefit in a week. It's going to take a few weeks at least. 3 months is a good measure. But this is brilliant and so interrelated as well. And once you're doing 2 or 3 of these habits and you add the 4th, it just gets easier because they all interrelated with each other. They're all components of the bigger picture. So, Brad, thank you so much. It's been absolutely enlightening, so valuable. And it's just thank you so much again for coming onto the show.
Thank you, Brad.
Oh, yeah, well, thank you guys, and thank you for the work you're doing. Your podcast is fantastic, and you both are fantastic. And it was really nice meeting you both personally last year, and hope to spend some more time with both of you in the future sometime.
build on our relationship, and we'll go for that cold water swim. So, no,
Awesome,
brilliant, Brad.
awesome.
Thank you so much. And Emma, before we go, quick announcement.
Oh, yes, quick announcement. We just wanted to touch base with you. We hope that you've been enjoying all the conversations so far. I think you've got a pretty good idea now of the types of conversations we do have. So if you know of any particular person that you think would fit our criteria here, you want someone on the show, send us an email or reach out to us on our social media, on our Facebook or our Instagram, and do let us know, because we want to make this show as helpful as we possibly can for you, the listener. So please do touch base if you have anyone that you'd love to listen to on the show.
Absolutely. And remember, our preference, and we have had some international guests and we'll continue to do so, but our preference is to shine the spotlight on our local Australia and New Zealand good people that have do amazing work, and that's who really we want to sort of elevate. So thank you so much for the support, and we'll continue to bring some amazing guests. Brad, again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Lentil Intervention Podcast. If you found this interesting, make sure you subscribe and share it with your friends.